What is going on, guys? Ronnie here with Speed Lab. Again, back with another GR Corolla content. You guys have actually been hitting me up about the off-the-shelf calibrations. A couple local guys that have been quite interested in what we're doing with this and you know, where this platform is headed for us at Speed Lab. Again, we have a very exciting video today. A lot of exciting things are happening with this platform. Obviously, we're taking everything step by step. So, you know, we're not just going from stock to, you know, fully built. We don't want to do that. We want to do our iterations and then develop packages for you guys. So when you want to make a certain amount of power, we have a package ready to go for you. We've already purchased cylinder heads, the blocks. We're working with Wiscon, a new piston. So we're taking all those steps, but obviously when it comes to the shop car, we're doing everything slowly and step by step, so you know we can enjoy the process. As you guys know, we're calibrating this on EcuTech, so it's kind of iffy right now. So there's a lot of bugs that, you know, have to be worked out. So we go back and forth with the engineers. This current time, the only modification we have is our catback exhaust, which power-wise, is it really doing anything? Probably not, just because, you know, it's such a free-flowing exhaust already. The only thing that you would actually need to change as far as you know, you changing it and it having a power effect, you know, adding power, would be the downpipe itself. So with those, we've been delayed a little bit, but it's not because we haven't been trying. I promise you, we've been trying. Look, we have transitions that we're gonna send this stuff back. We completely took the wrong approach, but we figured it out. We finally got the proper flanges for the GR Yaris, GR Corolla, and it's a very, very weird flange. It's a 5-inch outlet, and then it tapers down very aggressively, so you can't use any just any V-band clamp to hold it. We want to make sure, obviously, the factory clamp can be used. So they are going to be made. It's already, you know, I have like 5 or 6 units already spoken for. One of them for us, one of them for Devin at Boost and Performance, which we're going to get into their product that we're going to be testing today, which I'm super excited about. This engine is pretty damn efficient, but you can always make things more efficient. So the first thing that we need to tackle is obviously you know, the airflow, which is going to be intake, exhaust. Exhaust being, you know, the downpipe, but obviously when you're doing the downpipe, might as well get the nice Speed Lab back purge 304 stainless steel center exit exhaust. Right now we're sitting on E40, a drop-in air filter, which for all I know is actually losing power. We actually did a couple back-to-back pulls that lost like 2 horsepower. So I don't even know why we have it in there. It's just a K&N drop-in and nothing else aside from E40 in the tank, E38-ish in the tank, and our calibration. And it's making consistent, Chris, step into my office please, consistently making the same power back to back to back. As you guys can see, it's 311, 311.7, 312.3, so within 1.3 horsepower, and then same with the torque. So it's, you know, 310, 315 foot-pounds of torque back to back to back. I don't know why it's screaming at me. We're finally going to do our first physical mod, which is getting rid of this stupid airbox. The GR Corolla, GR Yaris, they're notorious for having insanely high intake air temperatures. It's a turbocharged car. It's got a quite small intercooler. And the boost levels that we're running about 30 pounds, tapering it to about 23 so we don't run into valve float, because again, we don't want to touch the engine just yet, even though we do have everything for it. When air gets hotter, it's not as dense. Dense air makes more power, obviously. The other thing is, whenever you have too high of intake air temperatures, the engine is more prone to knock. Given the fact that we're shoving so much boost in this engine and such a small displacement engine, and it makes torque down low, and it being direct injected, it's just a recipe for disaster having, you know, 110, 115 degree intake air temperatures when you're getting on it. So the first thing that we're gonna do, shout out to Devin at Boost and Performance. He went ahead and he sent us his intake, which I'll show in a second. And what it does is it completely isolates this whole upper snorkel that basically opens from the factory at 4,500 RPM and allows more air in, but it allows air that's coming above the radiator shroud inside the engine, which is just as stupid as it sounds. I mean, the intake air temps, you know, literally rise. You can see it in the log as it opens. What Devin has done, when I was speaking to him, he's taken a very careful approach doing this, making sure that the inner diameter of the actual tubing is exactly where it needs to be, so you can essentially have this as a plug and play mod and not need to rescale the mass airflow sensor. That's a big deal, and the reason for that is right now Ecutech does not have proper support for us to go in there and change the MAF scaling. Most of the tables, as I told you guys last time, are not defined properly. So for us to be able to have a bolt-on intake that makes more power, gets rid of that heat soak, and of course, you know, it's isolating all the engine heat as well, this is going to pick up power. It is going to pick up power, I know it is. So what we're gonna do is, we did 3 poles back to back, as you guys saw. We're gonna install this intake, and then we're gonna do 3 back-to-back pulls with the intake, no changes whatsoever to the calibration, because again, we're not trying to show you guys, oh, if you put this and then do this, this is how much you're gonna gain. No, this is just, we bolt on this damn part, this is how much power we're picking up. If you bolt this on and you gain 10 horsepower, that's a pretty damn, you know, horsepower per dollar essentially.
Yeah,
for
great bang
like
for your
this.
buck.
I believe these retail at $5.99, and it's worth it. I mean, it's an awesome kit. And then after that, what we have, if you guys look over there, that big box that's leaning against my pressure washer, which stresses me out now that I look at it, is a Forge Performance front mount intercooler. So it's a bigger unit. We're gonna install that, and we're gonna see how much more we can drop those IATs and how much power we can pick up. Another thing Boostin did that I really liked is they actually provide a hole right over here. So what you can do is you can, oh, that's an 8mm, that's awkward. Anyway, what you can do is you can just mount your solenoid here and then just plug it back in so you don't get any check engine lights, because you know, it's not a BMW. You know, we don't need those.
So this is full plug and play. You don't need to do anything.
You don't need to, yeah.
Someone like me could install this.
Even someone like you could install
Even someone like me.
I don't know if you could, but this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna go under. Gonna come up like this. I'm gonna throw a washer right here. Put the spacer, and then, like Devin very cleverly explains in his video, put another washer right there to make sure there's proper load distribution. Do not be like me. If you put a tool there, make sure you pick it up, especially if it's snap-on.
I wonder how many tools you've left in customer cars.
Right now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna use one. It's a mass airflow sensor. There's no pressure here. If anything, there's actually a negative pressure here. So there's like vacuum there whenever you open the throttle. So it's not like this thing's gonna go flying out with boost, because it does not see pressure.
Nice pipe, dude.
Man, the intake looks so good. I'm starting to get hot. No, so super easy, straightforward install. As you guys saw, if I wasn't yapping, it would probably take me like 5 minutes to, 10 minutes to put this thing together. Did I lose the cap that they so kindly provided?
I found it. Oh yeah! Ah!
We're finding that we're making about 8 to 10 more horsepower every run, but down low it's actually losing a little bit of boost, so it's not hitting boost as early as we wanted to. Now it's not like we've changed the turbo, so this could easily just be a load calculation thing in the ECU, so we might have to actually go back and adjust some ECU mapping just to get that boost to come up normally and hold flat just like it did with the stock airbox. But other than that, we're seeing literally 20 degrees Celsius temp drops. So we did one pull, we're gonna do 2 more, and then we're gonna compare the graphs, and then we might need to make some changes in the actual tune. But this is good because this is good feedback. Devin's gonna know what I had to do to basically get the boost to go where it needs to be down low. And anybody that wants to buy an intake, a boosted performance intake, and wants to get our calibration, we'll have one ready for them. So with that being said, a couple more pulls and then we'll touch base again. If you guys look right now at like 5,500 RPM, 299 is pre-intake, 300 is pre-intake, 299 is pre-intake, and if you look at the higher numbers, 316 is boosted intake, 311 boosted intake, 312 boosted intake. We're making about 10 more horsepower with the boosted performance intake. That's quite significant. So if you take a quick look at the air fuel ratio, you guys can see that there's only 3 overlays, and that's because once we installed the intake, it actually ran significantly leaner, about 1.5 AFR point leaner. Before we were at 12.1, 12.0, 12.0. Now we're at 13.4, 13.5, 13.5. Overall, we're seeing more power. It's making really cool noises. About 10 to 12 horsepower. Wheel horsepower is quite significant to see. 10 to 12 foot-pounds of torque, 10 to 12 horsepower.
And the temps are lower now too, huh?
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Right now, we are seeing at the end of the run like 28 degrees Celsius. 10 foot-pounds is 10 foot-pounds. At this point, when you're kind of extracting every single ounce of power, that's quite a bit. Now, another thing is, once I get the air fuel in line, like if I get this to like 12.5-ish, 12.2, 12.5-ish, it'll pick up more power. Right now, it's just too lean to make power. So, very interesting. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do a couple flashes real quick. How you would usually do it is you would essentially log your fuel trims, and based on those trims and the error that you're having when you're at wide open throttle, as far as what you have AFR wise and what you want, you would make some multiplication changes in the math curve, and happy days. But right now, again, we don't have that luxury. There are ways around it. I'm gonna make this richer. It's not ideal the way we're doing it right now, but it works. So I'm not gonna say how I'm gonna do it because it's not something I want people to do, but we can get this richer. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna add a little bit of boost down low just to kind of get it back up there. And I'm really curious to see this intake combined with our tune and a couple of revisions that we're doing. I'm really curious to see what this thing will actually make. So let's do some flashing. Alright, so at this point we concluded that we do need to make adjustments if it's a already calibrated vehicle and you put this intake on there. Otherwise, you might lose a little bit of your power band down low. You still pick up power up top, but a few tweaks and we are consistently making 325 horse, 325 torque essentially. What's really impressive, however, again, is not the peak numbers, because everybody likes to talk about peak numbers, but this is what you actually feel, and this is why having a dyno makes a big difference. We're making 248, 252, 250 right over here at 4,000 RPM. Before the intake, we were making 234, 233, 236. So 15, 16 horsepower under the curve, which is awesome because again, that's what you feel. And that same trend essentially continues all the way like over here. If you look at 5,600 RPM, again, remember green, yellow, and white is the intake and the tune. We're making 325, 323, 324.7. Before we were making 307, 307, 305. So those are obviously the peak gains that we're talking about right now. Our tune consistently does make 315, 314 power and torque. So essentially we picked up peak to peak 10 foot-pounds of torque, 10 horsepower, and under the curve we picked up 16, 17, maybe in some areas even more than that. So with just an intake for a $600 intake,
crazy.
So if you're gonna do the tune, obviously, just get the intake and then go to your tuner, whether it's gonna be us or it's gonna be whoever else. Just one particular pull that I'm showing you guys. By the end of the pull, we're at 41 degrees Celsius. So that's, you know, getting pretty damn warm. And then once we install the intake, this is our last pull that we did, 28 degrees Celsius by the end of the run. So that's a, you know, 13 degree difference just by the intake, just because the fact that that flap's not opening and it's not drawing all that hot air from, you know, essentially where the radiator is. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the front of, essentially take the front bumper off, unclip the front of the car per se, and then install our Forge Motorsports front mount intercooler. So before we do that, let's unbox the damn thing. What's unique about it is look at how this core is.
Oh shit.
So this is essentially like the same size as the GRC cooler, but then they have a secondary section over here that clears everything.
What on earth
Right?
is this?
It looks pretty weird, doesn't it?
It's 2 levels to the intercooler.
There's levels to this shit. Alright guys, so it is day 2. Unfortunately we had to call it a day a little bit early yesterday. We managed to get the front mount intercooler on. Super easy install, wasn't even anything for us to record for you guys, honestly. Me and Tony knocked down like 25 minutes. We have the Forge Motorsports front mount intercooler, significantly bigger intercooler. As you guys saw, the core at the top is the same size. However, at the bottom, it's essentially 5 inches wide. So, you know, you're getting a much bigger cross-sectional area. And on top of that, all the factory tubing gets replaced with actual 2-inch tubing. When we put it on the dyno again, I mean, it was on the dyno, but when we started doing runs again, we noticed that it was again hitting significantly more boost in the mid-range. In fact, it was hitting about 35 psi of boost, which obviously we don't want on E40 because it induces knock. And while the ECU, yes, it can correct for, you know, knock control and pull timing back, we don't want the ECU to have to do that work. We want to make sure our tune is crystal clear, as perfect as it can be, and, you know, just not be, you know, on that verge of knocking all the time. This is just an example. This is an open loop wastegate duty cycle table on a Haltech. So very simple. I'm just telling it, hey, at 3,500 RPM, I want 46%, and by 8,000 RPM, I want 39% duty cycle, right? Very easy. The ECU just takes that and follows that, and then this is open loop, so it just does not look at anything else. So what you have is you have 5 dimensions to the boost control. What this means is you have bins, okay? So if you look over here, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 18, right? And if you look on the actual column, you have 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,400. So this is the RPM column. This is the bin column. So what does that mean? That means number 1 will be Z-axis bin 1, Z being the 5th axis. And if you open this, this is the wastegate duty cycle for 800 RPM. If anybody knows anything about what I'm talking about, you'll know why it's confusing, because now every single point that every single RPM that I want to make an adjustment at, look, it has a different table. Every single point has a different table.
So you have to adjust every table?
Essentially, if you want to control it everywhere, but obviously I don't care about 800 RPM making boost, you know what I mean? What I do care about is that peak torque, you know, 3,000 RPM when it hits, it's hitting, you know, 35 something PSI, then I'll look between 2,800 and 3,200 RPM, which will be axes 8 and 9. So I'll go over here. I've already done this, but I'll go over here, I'll open this, I'll make my adjustments. As you guys can see, those numbers are not OEM. And then you'll go over here, same deal. So that's why it's kind of complex, because I can't just, you know, go and say, okay, at this RPM, you know, let me reduce duty cycle by 5%. I can't really do that. I would have to go to that specific table, look at the actual target. That's why it's called a 5-axis table, because this table is a 3D table, okay? And then we also have the bin. So we have all the other tables that are working in conjunction with this table to actually control the boost on the car. Now, some tuners, what they'll do is they won't touch this at all. The problem is that the PID algorithm is not fast enough for the ECU to correct the boost error, right? So what it'll do is it'll instantly start closing the throttle. Most people won't even notice that, but if you put this thing you know, on a dyno jet and you take the smoothing out, you'll have a shitty looking graph. Same thing with our main line. We don't have heavy smoothing applied. So whenever it closes the throttle, you know, I might close the throttle like 5-6 times during a run. Some people won't notice that, then, you know, they'll just take it and run with it, but you can see it on the graph. I mean, it is closing the throttle to get the boost to where you want it to be. But the problem with that is as soon as it does that, it undershoots the boost. So now it has to open again and then you overshoot. So you get this oscillating effect that is unwanted, and hence you don't have a proper, you know, boost curve. So if you, real quickly, if you look here, you'll see how close we are to our target. White line is the target, red line is where we're at right now. So as you can see right over here, we're a little bit under target, so that's the changes I made. This time around, we're gonna flash it. We're gonna do a couple more pulls. We're consistently 328, 327. I wanna see consistent 330s, and I feel like once we get that mid-range to that 30 PSI, because what happens now is it hits like 35 and then it'll drop to 27-ish because of the, you know, throttle closure. Once we get this sorted now, it'll hit a nice steady 30 PSI, taper to 22, 23 by red line, and we should be 330 horse, 330 torque around there, back to back to back. One other thing that I just want to talk about real quick, it's not even the fact that, you know, if we were running E80 or E85, we would be okay running that 35 PSI, 40 PSI, whatever. Obviously this turbo is, you know, not going to make anything at that power level, at that boost level. But the other major problem is that this setup is so efficient, especially having, you know, VVT and all that, and the turbo being properly sized for the engine. At 3,500 RPM, if I'm trying to shove 35 pounds of boost in the motor, it's just gonna surge. And I was telling Chris this, and he's like, what's surge? And I'm like, that's a fantastic question, let me talk about it. Surge is whenever the turbocharger actually makes more boost than the engine can ingest. So if you're on the dyno, and you hear the car kind of, well, you feel the car kind of hesitate, and you kind of hear like, almost like a turbo flutter noise, as the cars are coming up in RPM, that's turbo surge. You never want that. That's literally just back purging through your compressor wheel, and it's gonna destroy your bearings eventually. I've had this laptop on the steering wheel so much that the Toyota logo is literally worn off. Sorry about the annoying noise. If you guys look,
So right there.
exactly.
Okay.
Let me show you why that's happening. So I don't want feed forward to essentially overshoot either. So I have it tamed down a lot. So if you guys look over here at 4,000 RPM, well, at like 4,400 RPM is where we see that major dip. So it goes from 30 PSI to about 27, and then it climbs back to 30 at 5,000 RPM. So that dip is exactly what we're seeing. So this is something that peak numbers are not really gonna improve, but that dip, I want that dip gone, because I know personally, again, people always look at peak numbers, but that's not what you feel. You feel what you see on the graph.
What if someone steals your tune from here?
They can't. They actually can't. Oh, this?
Yeah.
What? They're gonna steal 2 wastegate duty cycle tables?
Yeah, they're gonna screenshot the wastegate duty.
Fucking spike. Oh.
Package
You know what
delivery.
this is?
What's going on?
These are our downpipe flanges from Germany. Look at that. 60 euros a piece.
60 euros? This little thing?
Basically what it is, it's a 5-inch outer diameter, but this inner lip is like 4.1 inches, and the turbo has a lip that goes in here, and there's also a dowel over here, which we don't really need to use, but it lines everything, but that ring is almost like a wastegate fire ring. So at the meat of the power band, the peak gains, which were at 5,400, 5,500-ish, we're seeing a peak of 25 horsepower, 29 horsepower on one pull. Before we were making 299.8, 299.4, 300 flat. Now we're making 329.2, 325.5, 325.8. So
Nice.
give or take, you know, 25, 26 foot-pounds of torque, right? And the horsepower gains in the mid-range are even bigger, actually. 321, 322, before 297, 297.6, 298. So what conclusion do we draw from this?
Go to speedlab.com.
We were making peak power actually a little bit higher in the RPM range. Now we're making it a little bit earlier. So before, as you can see, 312, 311, 311.7. Now we're making that a little bit earlier too. 331, 329, 328. Like I said, in the meat of the power band is where we picked up most. So 25 plus horsepower. The addition of only a Forge Motorsports front mount intercooler and a boost and performance intake. The intake itself was worth like 15, 18 horsepower. So just by doing that and eliminating the hot air, you know, through the radiator and underneath the trap door going inside the airbox, we already made more power. As you guys can see, air fuel ratio hasn't changed. Super impressed with that. Up next, PPG. Shout out to PPG.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, we're being partially sponsored by them. We're gonna do a drag program on the GR Corolla. It's a GR Corolla gearbox, basically, brand new from Corolla. This is the block, and these are the heads. So there's some serious development going on. What's going on? See, the Toyota guy's here. With PPG, like I said, we're gonna be working. The ratios that they have right now is not ideal for drag, but you know, it's a starting point. So we're gonna have a super stout gearbox. Obviously with the Slavex we can do proper shift cuts and stuff like that. I did get an aftermarket shifter, which we'll get into in the next video. We still have to kind of implement a lockout, so I'm going to try to figure out how I can implement a lockout mechanism so I don't money shift this thing. And because it's a 6-speed and the ratios are so close, we are going to need to shift into 5th gear in the quarter. So I'm also going to figure out a way to not have to essentially worry about money shifting into 3rd either. With that being said, for today we're done. That was really good gains. Shout out to Devin at Boost and Performance. Shout out to Forge Motorsports and Grocery Getter Performance. And that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this technical video. Like, subscribe, comment, share, I don't know, stuff like that. I'll see you guys in the next one.